Eddie Olczyk here on the program. How are you, Eddie?
I'm doing fine, Rich. Thanks for having me. Hope you're having a good day.
I am. So, Eddie, you tell me what you think of this Stanley Cup Final matchup.
Well, I think two teams that like to play the same way, Rich. I think it's going to be a real entertaining final. I think when we went into the conference finals, the West and the East, whatever the matchup was going to be, I thought was going to be a marquee matchup because you have star power on all sides. You have a franchise in Chicago that is on the verge of winning their third Stanley Cup in 6 years. You have a team in Tampa Bay that was pretty much the flavor of the month at the start of the year with all the great moves that Steve Yzerman, former great Red Wing and now general manager with the Lightning, had made. And John Cooper, the coach of Lightning, has done an outstanding job. So I just think the style of play, the tempo, and if either goaltender is slightly above average, we could still have 5-4 games every night, and I think that would be great for the game, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I just mentioned how Chicago, once they have a lead after two periods, they're undefeated. The Lightning are undefeated in the postseason when they score first. So this is set up for an evenly matched Stanley Cup Final, it appears, Eddie.
Yeah, it is. The Blackhawks certainly have the pedigree and the experience, as I mentioned, having already won 2 cups in the last 5 seasons, and they're battle-tested. And anybody that you would ask, Rich, I could just speak from experience. I was a small member of the team back in 1994 with the New York Rangers, and I had played 10 years in the league up until that point, and I thought I knew how hard it, I thought I knew what it took to win, but until you actually attain it and you go through it, you really have no idea how hard it is to win. And I think for the Blackhawks, they're battle-tested. They've been there. They've done that. And the Lightning are a young team, but they still have some experienced guys on their team that have been in a Stanley Cup Final. And, Strawman and Boyle, 2 guys that Yzerman signed away from the Rangers over the course of the summer as free agents. And those guys have been there. And, Ryan Callahan was an important part of the Rangers for a long stretch. So, they've got guys there. And but they can really push the pace, and they can really play a fast game. But it's funny, in the last series, Rich, against the Rangers, they couldn't defend in their own building, and when they went on the road, they were able to get 2 shutouts in games 5 and 7 on the road and be able to win that series. So, it's been their strength of their team is their offense and how fast they play, but what was impressive about how they beat the Rangers was that they were able to really defend and shut the Rangers down and shut them out in back-to-back games. Look, any team that can go on the road in the playoffs and win 3 or 4 on the road to win a series, that's pretty salty stuff, and the Lightning are going to be they're going to be a handful for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, certainly, since they have the home ice advantage over the entirety of the 7-game series, should it go the full distance. But that said, the Rangers were able to take care of business in Tampa, and that's part of the issue I have having this conversation with you right now, Eddie Olczyk of NBC Sports, is because that conference final it was thoroughly unpredictable. And Chicago against Anaheim, they won games 6 and 7 to wrap that up. How do you even predict what may happen over the next week and a half?
Yeah, I think, that is going to be, that's going to be very difficult to figure out on how this is going to play out. All you can go on is what the strengths, what the weaknesses of these particular clubs are, Rich. And when you look at the strengths of both of these teams, they both want to play fast. They both want to play an up-tempo type of game. A lot of their offense starts with their defensemen lugging the puck or making that first good pass or jumping into the play. Both these teams are going to give up chances. And neither one of these teams has faced a team like they're going to see in the Stanley Cup Final that can put the puck in the back of the net. Like if you look at Chicago, they took on Nashville, and they took on Minnesota, and then they had Anaheim. Those teams don't have the offensive finish in the depth and the speed that the Lightning play with, because you've got Steven Stamkos and Tyler Johnson that can really do it. And for Chicago, or for Tampa Bay, they played Detroit, they played Montreal, they played the Rangers. They have not seen a team that can finish and play the way the Blackhawks can. So, at some point, something definitely has to give. But for me, it is about the depth of both of these teams and the experience that Chicago has that gives them the edge. But I don't think really home ice has. I really don't. If I would always want a Game 7 in my own building. Now you can sit here and say, well, it really worked out well for the teams in the East and the West Final with what just happened. But I think as a coach and as a player, you would want that Game 7 in your own building. But I really don't believe is that, home ice will be a determining factor in this series, whether it goes in the favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning or not.
Eddie Olczyk joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So in a way where you can't root for anybody, Eddie, I understand. But had the Rangers advanced, you'd have been able to maybe do Game 2 in Madison Square Garden and the Belmont. You may, if you had a helicopter, because obviously, with 100,000 fans out there, there in Queens, to get from there to Midtown Manhattan would require a helicopter to get there within an hour. So what are you going to do with Saturday Game 2 in Tampa now on the Belmont Stakes with American Pharoah going for the Triple Crown? What are you going to do, Eddie?
Yeah, well, I'm just doing what I'm told. And my boss, Sam Flood, said I'm doing horse racing, so I'm going to be off of hockey on Saturday night. Now, you're right. If the Rangers would have won, I would have done the doubleheader.
Yes.
I would have gone the afternoon at the Belmont, and then I would have done Game 2 at the Rangers, but that did not play out, and I'm just doing what I'm told, and I'm not arguing about it one bit.
I know. Now, they would have sent the Comcast helicopter for you, I'm sure, had that been the case. But, so you will be in New York with a big historic race running. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen in that, Eddie? Do you think American Pharoah takes care of business?
I really feel more confident if the weather obviously doesn't cooperate, meaning rain showers, a sloppy track, and off track. It just seems that in the two races that American Pharoah has had, Rich, is that he really seems to be a better horse on the off track, and that would certainly move him up, and he would be awfully tough to beat if that was the case. Now, just saying if it's a beautiful day in Elmont, New York, and everything is being fair, we've had a scratch here in the last little while where Carpe Diem, one of the speed horses, is now out of the running of the Belmont. So that's a different scenario that's going to play out. It's an awful lot to ask, and there's a reason why we haven't had a winner in 37 years. And as you know, Rich, it's so difficult on these young horses to run 3 races in 5 weeks, and then the last one you're going a mile and a half. So it does become a rider's race, like it does become a jockey's race on when to move and when to get not necessarily get caught up in everything, but Victor Espinosa has the experience. He came up short last year on California Chrome, so that certainly plays into his favor with the experience. But I think you got to look and see exactly who's all in with the post draw this week. But for me, if it does come up like it did at Pimlico in the Preakness, and the track is a little bit off, it'd be very, very difficult to beat, American Pharoah, and we'd have our first Triple Crown winner in 37 years.
What if it's a nice, beautiful June day in New York? Which horse might be able to spoil the party?
Well, I'm looking at a horse by the name of Frosted. He ran a credible race at the Kentucky Derby. It wasn't a very fast race, which I think hurt Frosted's chances. So, yeah, I think the horse is certainly built and has the breeding to be able to go the mile and a half, which is a testing distance without question. So you'd need a little bit more of a quicker pace up front. But like I said, it becomes a jockey's race. It's almost like, do you make it a lot of these long races, Rich, are, when I talk about being jockey races, is that, okay, you have to have that clock in your head, and you got to know when to make it. Is it a half-mile race for you? Does it become a 3/4 of a mile race for you? You got to be able to judge the pace and see what's going on. But I think that the way that Frosted has trained out the Kentucky Derby, he would be one horse I'm certainly looking at on taking on American Pharoah. And if it's a nice, beautiful day in Elmont, New York on Saturday.
Now, Eddie, Pharoah is usually spelled A-O-H at the end, and this horse is spelled O-A-H at the end. Have you heard anybody refer to this horse as American Pharoah? Have you ever heard anybody call it the horse American Pharoah?
I have not.
Okay. Would you like to? Here we go. Tell Tufo, hit it.
American Pharoah.
That's the way my producer and on-air colleague Chris Brockman called it, just first blush seeing the horse's name prior to the Kentucky Derby. Now,
an English major, I take it.
Are you an English major, Chris Brockman?
Political science.
Political science, Eddie. Okay.
Right.
Can you at least, but I mean, you're a handicapper, you're a man around the horse racing game. Can you at least understand where that comes from, Eddie? Someone who's last.
You ever look at the spelling of my last name, Olczyk? Get that guy a vowel, would you please? I have enough problem with hockey players' names than worrying about horse. Hey, whatever number American Pharoah has, I like the 4-horse if it's a sloppy track, if that's what he ends up being. I'm not going to worry about the name. I'm going to leave that to Larry Colmus, our great announcer, calling the Belmont on Saturday.
Eddie, I look forward to hearing your call Wednesday night, Game 1, and then, of course, your coverage of the Belmont Stakes on Saturday when there's a Game 2, and then you go back with Doc Emmerich and the crew. I look forward to it.
Rich, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it very much.
You bet. That's Eddie Olczyk.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.